Sony put out a wide range of action cams, and I've been using their 4K model over the past year. Until recently, this has been their top model, but now there's a new RX0. Superb video stabilisation has been the hallmark of Sonys, yet strangely this top model has none at all. But it can shoot ultra slow motion footage at 1000 frames per second in 1080p. It sounds as though this is a camera for mainly professional use, so we'll focus on the 4K Action Cam and from a dirt riding perspective. Let's start with the good things: optical image stabilisation. We've all seen this sort of unstabilised footage that is barely watchable and even gives some people motion sickness. Optical image stabilisation immediately puts Sony ahead of all of its competitors, including Gopro, who've only just started using digital stabilisation recently. With digital stabilisation, the camera crops the image slightly, then moves this around to minimise shaking. It does work, but it tends to be a bit jerky and can't fix the lack of quality that comes with the camera being bounced around a lot. With optical stabilisation, the actual lens moves, so you retain the full image in better quality and with a smoother, more natural feel to the stabilisation. And because the image isn't cropped, you can even use this at 4K resolution. To see it working, watch the little blob of water on the screen here. It's bouncing around like mad as the lens moves to ensure the video footage is smooth. Actually, the first time I used the optical stabilisation, I thought it worked too well. In this vid, it made the track look so smooth, I felt that the footage looked slow and the track looked too easy. But then I discovered there was a mid setting that has worked perfectly for helmet camera footage in all subsequent rides. I usually only swing to the full stabilisation for handheld filming, or when I put the camera on a selfie stick such as here, where I experimented with trying to simulate drone footage. For me, the second biggest feature of the Sony is brilliant audio quality compared to the opposition. Nowadays, I always use this Sony camera for narrating videos, and the audio is excellent for handheld footage with the forward-facing stereo microphone. However, put the Sony in its waterproof case, it sucks. And it's a lot worse than earlier GoPro models in their waterproof cases. But here is a dodgy but extremely effective tip. Simply get a small piece of foam and use a rubber band to hold it over the microphone. The quality barely drops and there is no wind noise at all until about 50 kilometers per hour. Perfect for the vast majority of dirt riding. Video quality is excellent too. In the past, experts have generally said the Sony had the edge over the GoPro. Some reviews did report the GoPro was sharper and had more colour, but I don't think they realised that the default mode on GoPros digitally sharpens the video and increases colour saturation. The Sony is a more natural video, and then you can add saturation or sharpness when you are editing. Other features: the Sony comes with a standard tripod mount and also an external microphone input if you want to rig up a helmet mic or connect to a wireless mic. Battery life is excellent, with around 2 hours of filming at 1080p and about an hour at 4K. What are the potential negatives? If you want an LCD screen, there isn't one built into the camera. You need to buy the live remote kit, which is wrist mounted. We haven't tested this kit, but reviews seem to indicate it's a work in progress and needs some improvements to really work well. An early criticism of Sony Action Cams was the lack of mounting options compared to GoPros, but now there's a mounting bracket that lets you use any kind of GoPro mount. Problem solved. From a dirt riding perspective, the actual shape of the Sony could be an issue, depending on how you mount the camera. If you stick it to the side of the helmet, its slim profile is actually better than most other brands because it doesn't stick out as much. However, if you use a chin bar mount or a chest mount, the Sony does protrude quite a lot. I've been using this chin bar mount without problems, but it simply looks weird. However, you can also mount the Sony upside down under your peak and use the camera setting that automatically corrects the video when the camera is upside down. It all begs the question, why did Sony make the action camera long? Well, it's because they needed the length to fit that optical stabilisation, which, as we said, is something no other action cam has. When Sony introduced its optical image stabilisation over 3 years ago, I believe that's the point where it probably became the best action cam for dirt riding. GoPro and other brands have always been better in some respects, but I think the advantage of that smooth, natural looking video over rough terrain is a huge plus. After one ride with the Sony, my old GoPro Black was packed up and sold. However, GoPro has finally introduced digital stabilisation recently in its Series 5 range. And while it can't be a match for optical stabilisation, we keep hearing it's actually quite good. So our next step is to get our hands on a GoPro Series 5 or 6 and compare the cameras side by side. These action cams have a huge range of features and settings now, so this was just a brief overview for dirt riders. Read as many other reviews as possible to get a well-rounded view on these action cams.